So following up on that, both Mr. Parrish and Mr. Schiff, you take a look at your written testimonies. They clearly document the EPA and the Corps had clearly attempted to expand what is a water of the United States despite what the current court stay says about the rule. I think it's important because, as you know, I introduced the legislation. You just referred, it was bipartisan. The so-called Federal Water Quality Protection Act, and was to repeal the rule and have the EPA go back and draft a new, more tailored rule that basically protects families and farmers and small business owners. But rather than vote for the bill, we had 11 senators who had expressed concerns with the Waters of the U.S. rule. They chose to write this letter rather than a vote against the legislation. And instead, they wrote about their concerns to the EPA and the Corps. The letter stated, quote, "We call on the EPA and the Army Corps of Engineers to provide clearer and concise implementation guidance to ensure that the rule is effectively and consistently interpreted." They went on to say, "Farmers, ranchers, water utilities, local governments, and contractors deserve this clarity and certainty." They said, "Should the EPA not provide this clarity or enforce this rule in a way that erodes traditional exemptions, then we reserve the right to support efforts in the future to revise the rule." So in your opinions, to both of you, has the Corps and the EPA been eroding traditional exemptions since this rule has been issued? And how clear and consistent has the Corps and the EPA been in their decision-making since the rule has been issued?
Mr. Barrasso, Senator Barrasso, what we have seen is the agencies eroding the exemptions. We've seen them intrusively trying to not only influence the activities that farmers conduct on their land, they try to influence the way the farmers use their land, flat out. With regard to guidance, it is pure speculation on my part, but I would probably take a bet that the EPA and the Corps will not do implementation guidance. They do not plan to. They have stated such. So we don't expect implementation guidance. And number two, this rule, the specifics of this rule and what expands it, allowing the agencies to use tools that the human eye can't see as affirmative evidence, thank you, that they can regulate a bed, bank, and ordinary high water mark. That cannot be changed by guidance. That is an expansion. It is a significant expansion, and the agencies have not been transparent about that. Thank you.
Mr. Schiff, would you like to weigh in on this?
And I would just add that it shouldn't be surprising that we're seeing such a dramatic expansion under the WOTUS rule, in part because you look at the exceptions. Why would there be a need to call out an exception for the regulation of puddles or ornamental fixtures? The only reason for those exceptions is because otherwise, legitimately, the scope of the rule would cover things like that. So it's not surprising, unfortunately, that the agencies have continued through the WOTUS rule to expand their authority.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.